the music industry is going to be upset about this when they find out, because again, all the middlemen are going to cut out, all the ways that the labels and the publishers and the whoever, like their bread and butter is going to be gone. But so there are some people who you tell them this and they're very like, no, the traditional way, becoming a TikTok star, is the only way that this is going to happen. And then there are some people who like, they'll sit and they'll just think for a minute, and then they'll kind of catch on a little bit, and then they'll send me an email at 3 a.m. being like, how can I get in on this?
You had to go and tell everyone about my attention that you hadn't won. But I bet you're wondering why a cute little knife doesn't hurt my back like you thought it would. Well, thankfully you did the hard part for me, and I just think it's good. You put the cherry on top for the mess you made, but I'll leave it out to rot. Won't say a lot, won't give you the reaction that you want. Sing a cherry on top. It's cherry on top.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the podcast. We have another Value-for-Value musician in the house today. I talked to Joe Martin yesterday, and I really like having similar episodes and themes together because it gives people different perspectives on the same sort of topic. So today we have Ainsley Costello. She is a wonderful musician hailing out of Nashville at the moment. I got to see her perform during the Bitcoin conference this year, and super excited to chat, Ainsley. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So I would love to start off like I normally do and just hear your whole backstory. You are only 20 years old, but you've been through so much in this musician journey, I feel, just from following you on Nostr. So could you give us a bit of backstory? When did this whole music thing start for you, and how has it developed?
Absolutely. Well, my dad is a musician, and so I grew up with music around the house, going and seeing my dad in cover bands when I was like 3-4 years old. So that was already a very, I think, a notion that was very ingrained in my head from the beginning. Like, music is just going to be a part of my life. I knew that. And I was always performing in talent shows and the school musicals. And then when I was 11, we moved to Seattle. I was actually born in Sarasota, Florida, which, as we're speaking, is just getting like railed by one of the hurricanes. But so when I was 11, we moved to Seattle, and that's really where real music started for me. I still continued doing the school talent shows and the musicals, but that's where I started writing songs. That's where my first Ainsley Costello gigs happened. And then, before I knew it, I was 15. I had done 100 and something shows in like 20 states. I was already like missing a lot of school because I had to travel so much for music and playing shows. And, Nashville had always just been this little kind of bug in my head being like, what about Nashville? What about Nashville? And so I think mastered the 15-year-old puppy dog eyes with my parents being like, hey, can we move to Nashville? Can we do this? Can we do that? And then my parents finally were like, cool, yeah, let's do a family adventure. We're going to go to Nashville, because my parents are just like me in the sense that, we're wanderers at heart, like we were talking about before we started recording. My parents like met and are from California, and like I'm 20, but I've lived in a million different places already. And so when it was time to move to Nashville, we were all like, all right, cool. We love Seattle, but I think it's time for the new adventure. And then when we finally got to Nashville, we got here 2 weeks before COVID hit, which was a ride, a journey, to say the least. And here I was thinking that musicians were supposed to have good timing, but apparently not. But 2020, it was a blessing in disguise, because that year and the following couple years were pretty tricky. But that's where I really got, albeit virtually, where I really got connected with the Nashville Songwriters Association and just kind of the Nashville songwriting crowd. And that's really how I learned the art of, okay, we're going to sit down for 3 hours and we're not going to get up until we finish this song, and whether it's good or bad or whatever. And then, you do that for a couple years, you get really good at that. And then you start writing with producers where you just go into a room where it's just you and another person and you're writing this song while a producer is working up the track. And that's a whole other really cool writing experience that you start to get used to. And then last year in July of 2023 is how this whole Bitcoin journey started for me.
That's awesome. And how did Bitcoin come into all of this? Like, did you always think about that before, or did that just, like, I'm curious where that came in, because so far I didn't hear any like Bitcoin inklings like tapping your shoulder. How did that enter the picture?
Yeah, you're right. It was never anything that I was like, even when I was like 14, 15, I wasn't kind of like the kid in school who was like, oh, Bitcoin, you guys got to check this out. I mean, I'd heard about it in passing and was like, okay, cool. Like, I was very indifferent about it. I wasn't like super, oh, this is really cool, but I wasn't also like, this is bad, don't touch it. Like, I think a lot of people think when they first see Bitcoin, because it's this unknown and new thing, which is a normal reaction for that.
I mean, I was like 10 years ahead of you and surrounded by very techie people, and I still didn't get it. So very few people got it in the early days. It's just, I mean, we still are the early days. In like the first decade, it was like you got to be like extremely into like Austrian economics or cypherpunk or the technical stuff. Almost nobody did. Things. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, so it was never anything that I'd really had on the radar. But when we moved to Nashville, my dad had been he'd been following kind of the crypto world. He wasn't super like, oh, we have to buy Bitcoin, but he was interested in it. He was always kind of like just keeping up with it. And when he would like kind of tell my mom and I like, oh, hey, I've been reading about this thing or yada, 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 we'd be like, all right, cool. Thank you. We'll talk later. But then in July of 2023, who would have thought that there's this place in Nashville called Bitcoin Park? I never would have known that if you hadn't told me. And in true Nashville fashion, it's located in a very cool spot. It's actually the two Florida Georgia Line houses on Music Row, right by Belmont University, which is like our big music university here, which is where Florida Georgia Line recorded their first couple like really big albums. So it's very cool, rooted in music history as always. But my dad, his day job is in mortgages, and I'm 20, I still live at home, so that's why you'll hear me bring up my parents a lot. My dad's day job is in mortgages. So one day he went down to Bitcoin Park and he was looking for a couple of young rich kids who had money to burn, like to get a mortgage to buy a house on. And the joke is that he went to sell mortgages, but he got sold on Bitcoin. So when he was there was a demo of this new company happening called Wave Lake. We all know and love Wave Lake.
No way. That's a crazy coincidence.
Right? It's so wild how this whole thing happened. So my dad, he just went in and he sat in on it because he was like, music. And my dad's a lifelong musician. He was in LA in the 90s doing the same thing that I'm doing here in Nashville now. So he sat in on it because it was like two of his big interests really colliding. And then he came home and he told my mom and I, he was like, hey, you guys might want to go check this out. Like, I know it's weird. Just trust me. Go down, take a look. So my mom and I went down the next day. I think my dad went down on a Friday. And my mom and I went down that following the next day, the Friday. And we went in and we sat on the demo that Wave Lake was happening because there was a lightning summit happening that week. And Sam Means, who is one half of Wave Lake, him and Michael Rhee, who I've now come to just like know and love both of them. He was just giving this demo about Wave Lake and what it was and how it's basically a streaming service, but you get paid in Bitcoin. And my mom and I kind of just looked at each other. We were like, why not? We've been throwing spaghetti at the wall for 5 years. Nothing's really been sticking. So then we went home like a week or so later. We uploaded one of my songs called Cherry on Top. And then that led to me sitting here with you. Long story short, it became the first song on Wave Lake to hit 1 million sats, which is like, it still baffles me like a year and a half later. And then Adam Curry picked it up on his podcast, then a bunch of other podcasters started playing it. And it's just led to a million amazing opportunities that I'm just so lucky to be able to have gotten.
Yeah, a few things there. Bitcoin Park is amazing. That's the first place that I went when I arrived in well, one of the first places I went when I arrived in Nashville this year for the conference was I knew I had to go see their meetup. Anytime you're in like a new city, the first thing I want to do is see their Bitcoin meetup. That's like the gauge for how cool the city is to me.
Yeah, completely.
And they have a great one.
They do.
I lived in Austin for a year, and they have a really great meetup scene there. There's a lot of Bitcoiners there, but there's like a rivalry with Nashville. Nashville's always saying that they're actually better, and so I had to go check it out. And man, the houses, like you said, it's like two houses next to each other. They have both of those. It's so cool. It's like a house party
cool.
kind of vibe, you know?
It's totally a house party. It's got this little fire pit outside. It's got a built-in coffee shop. I went there one day and they were just like giving out pizza. And I was like, this is cool. This is great. And also, I'm only bringing this up because you said you talked to Joe Martin yesterday. Can I tell you a funny story about
Absolutely.
Joe? And
I hope it's embarrassing. Embarrassing stories are the best.
So when Joe was here in July, Joe and I met up a couple weeks before the Bitcoin conference, and we wrote a song together. We actually wrote a couple songs together. But, he got to my house, which is like a trek from downtown Nashville. Like, he spent the money on like a 35-minute Uber, which, like, praying for Joe's bank account because that could not have been cheap. But we were kind of just talking and catching up before we started writing, and Joe had told me what he was doing that day. And he told me, it's not going to make a ton of sense unless you kind of know the geography of Nashville. But this poor guy, Joe, told me that he walked from Bitcoin Park to Broadway in downtown Nashville, which is like, it is so far away. And he was like, you could see it. He was kind of sunburned. He was really tired. And he pulled his shoe down and he showed me this like massive blister that he had from walking. It's no joke. It's probably like 3.5 miles from Bitcoin Park to downtown Nashville. Also, it's July in the dead of Nashville heat. So that was I was like, Joe, why would you do that?
I actually did a similar walk a few times during the conference. I'm a crazy walker. I love walking. I walk all over the place. And it's a beautiful city to really do that because there's just it's not very hilly, so you're not really getting, too much elevation gain, but it's fun. Yeah. There were many nights where I was like on Broadway. I'm like, I don't want to spend money on Uber. It's so expensive. I had just came over from Colombia where the Uber is like, $3 for like a 40-minute ride. Mm-hmm. And then I land in the US, and the first place I'm at is Nashville. And to get to my Airbnb, it's like $50 for like a 20-minute ride. Like,
it's stupid. It's really dumb.
It's good exercise motivation to get walking.
Completely.
One of the things I wanted to mention earlier is that you mentioned how both of your parents have played a part in this journey for you. And I think that's so cool. It sounds like you have a really awesome family unit. So could you tell me just like how your family has helped support you in this way? I think this would be good motivation for even there's lots of young parent Bitcoiners out there who are trying to just have awesome kids who are doing awesome things. So what have your parents done in your journey that have really helped you in this way?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So I think one thing to note is that, my parents' outright support of me didn't start with this Bitcoin thing. It started when I told them when I was 12 and I told them that I want to do music. They were like, all right, cool, you can do that. But just because you are going to turn 18 one day, that doesn't mean you're going to do this alone, because the music industry is it's a wonderful place, but it's also a very scary and very dangerous place. And
as we're learning more and more for those following on Twitter.
Completely. Like all the stuff that's happening with Diddy right now, it's just like that. I swear my mom comes down like once a week and she's like, oh my God, Ainsley, this Diddy stuff is so bad. Because it is. But I was 12, 13, really starting to like play gigs for the first time and starting to write the beginnings of an album that I put out when I was 15. And my mom both of my parents, but my mom, in particular, because my mom is always like, my mom and I are like that. Like my mom's my best friend. And she just jumped on the bandwagon with me and she was like, all right, cool. Like you want to put out a record? Let me go Google it, like see how we're going to put out a record and what you have to do to like get your music on Spotify and Apple Music and how you copyright it and all that stuff. Like my mom really kind of just jumped into that role for sure. And then of course my dad, he's been in music his whole life. And so my dad was in my band. My dad is still in my band. My dad engineered and basically produced my whole first record from our home studio in Seattle. And they both are still just massively instrumental with, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today if I didn't have the support of my parents. But I think definitely in the Bitcoin space, my mom, I think, has even become, even more of a protective mama bear in the sense that, like, we believe in Bitcoin. We think it's a great thing, but it is a new and unknown and can be a scary thing. So my mom is always kind of that, like, first line of defense when someone's like, hey, Ainsley, can we interview you? Hey, Ainsley, try this thing out. My mom's like, okay, cool, but, like, what purpose does this serve? She's got an itemized list of, like, 72 questions. And yeah, so my parents are just immensely supportive of me, and I'm very grateful because I know that a lot of people aren't as lucky to have the parental support that I do. Yeah.
I love it, and I love bringing this up whenever I can see it because we need to make a change in the world, and it starts with the good family units, and that's something I learned more and more. And so I also feel very lucky. I had a very supportive family, never had to really struggle financially. Had lots of opportunities, and I just hope that we can bring more and more parents up to speed on that. And we have a lot of them in Bitcoin. And Bitcoiners are having babies everywhere, which is amazing because I know that they're awesome people that are going to be doing this. So very, very exciting times for sure. Let's pivot a bit into just music because this is what I mean, your whole life has been surrounded by music. So you probably have a very interesting idea of just what let's call the fiat music industry, the modern, the way that most musicians have to make their way in right now, because it seems like there's so much opportunity to create music and put it out there, but yet whenever you hear musicians talk about like actually trying to make money on it, it just sounds like a nightmare. I think even I can't remember what it was. Snoop Dogg went on some podcast and he was like, "Yeah, I mean, I get like millions and millions of plays on Spotify, but I only get like X amount." It was like quite small actually for someone who's even an A-lister. So what is your view on that whole space? And then we'll go into how, these new solutions are coming into the field after that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the music industry is broken, kind of irreparably. And it's funny that you bring up Snoop Dogg because that's one of the things that I kind of always tell people when people with an outside look who don't really kind of understand all the inner machinations of the music industry. I'll bring up someone like Snoop Dogg who said, I don't remember what the number of streams was, but I want to say he had gotten over 1 billion streams and he'd only received $20,000 from his streaming royalties. And that's not, if Snoop Dogg is making that, then what hope do I have? Like, that's one of those things that I always try to pull out to put it into perspective. But yeah, the music industry is, oh my gosh. I think the traditional music industry has, let me think about how to say this. I think the traditional music industry has given us this false, I don't know why I'm struggling with how to say this. It's given us this false pretense of like, work hard, write enough songs. If you just keep writing the one song, it's gonna work out one day. And I think there is truth to that. I do. I think you have to be in this industry, you have to be like just a little bit delusional to like keep thinking that this is gonna happen for you. But there is a very capitalistic, I think, stance the music industry takes when it looks at the art that the independent artists specifically are putting out. Because if you think about it, the independent artists, the artists like me, the artists like my friend Emily Deranged and Arrayas and JoJo Scott, who are all artists in the Value-verse, who are my friends here in Nashville, who I've kind of turned them on to this. It's independent artists who the music industry is making their money off of. Sure, like, the music industry is definitely profiting off of the Taylor Swifts, the Beyoncés, the Ed Sheerans, but the little guys who are the ones who are spending $1,000+ on each song, and that's not even on the marketing costs, that's not even on pushing the song, that's not even on the cover art, that is just the creation of the song itself. And then you have mixing and mastering, which is a whole other thing. We're paying upwards of $2,000 per song, and then the mechanical streaming royalty rate, I don't remember what the current one is now, but the one before it was, and I went to, if anyone is like, why does she know this? Or does she know this? I went to Berklee College of Music and I have a music business degree, so I do know this stuff. The mechanical royalty rate is 0.009 cents. That's not even 1 cent per stream. And then you think about it, and then that 0.009 has to get split up between the co-writers. And then if the co-writers have publishing deals, if they're self-published, if they have pro-publishing, like it's getting split up into pies of pies of pies. And it is in no way, shape, or form sustainable. One of the big things that I've been going around saying is in 5 years on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, you name it, I only made $750 from my catalog of 20 plus songs, which again, I spent over $1,000 on each song out of my own pocket because I don't have a label. I don't have big major VC funding behind me. That is, you're actively losing money at an exponential rate. It's not even like you have to laugh about it or else you're going to cry about it. And it's just, I think one of the other things about the music industry that makes me a little angry is a couple years ago, there was, maybe not a couple years ago, maybe just 1 year ago, there was this Billboard article that came out that said the music industry can't find any new stars. And I saw that headline and I wanted to pull my hair out. I was like, taking even me out of the equation, just like as someone who knows a lot about the industry, not even as an artist, I was like, are you kidding me? Look around. If you can't find any artists, music industry, I'm talking to you, it is because of your own making, because you have forced independent artists to become something that they're not online. You've forced them to become content creators, and you've told them that, hey, you're great, but if you don't have 100,000 followers, like we can't help you, which is something I've had people tell me. And then they'll give content creators who just decide to do a song because they think it'd be fun, who already have the 2, 3, 4 million followers, and they give them a record deal. And maybe I'm bitter and maybe I'm jaded, but you're not making musicians, you're not making stars as you call them anymore. You're, again, like the music industry is failing by the music industry's own design. And yeah, I mean, I could go on and on. I could get on my pedestal and go all night, but yeah, the music
That's what we're here for. We love soapbox rants.
There goes my heart, there goes my head, there goes my... Was it only once or twice that it took for me to fantasize? I was all in by the second night. Oh, I was, oh, I was, oh, I was. And it seems pretty off-brand for me to start changing all my plans. There at the window when you're touching my hand, I was. There goes the future in my head, all the delusions that I fed. There goes all that time I spent trying to stay independent. It's not easy for me to fall, but here I am jumping in first. You got me out the blue skies, and I'm not coming back to earth, back to earth, back to earth. I was good being on my own, but you got me completely thrown. Now I guess nothing's set in stone. No, it's not, no, it's not, no, it's not. And I guess I learned my lesson. It can all change in a second. Oh, I was. There goes the future in my head, all the delusions that I fed. There goes all that time I spent trying to stay independent. It's not easy for me to fall, but here I am jumping in first. You got me out the blue skies, and I'm not coming back to earth. There goes my head, there goes my heart, there goes my head, there goes my, there goes my head, there goes my heart, there goes my head, there goes my, there goes my head. There goes my head, there goes my.
Would you say that this sort of shift you're saying of basically these labels looking more for influencers than actual talents, is that a fair assessment you would say?
Absolutely, for sure.
Do you think that is part of the reason why pretty much anyone you ask, has music gotten better or worse, like mainstream music, I guess, when you turn on the radio? I mean, I sure feel like when I listen to most modern music, it just sounds like very fiat, very like just constant dopamine choruses and not a lot of depth and really short songs, all those sorts of things we talk about. Do you think that's a big reason why?
I do, and don't get me wrong, I still think that there's a lot of amazing artists out there who who do have bigger followings and who do kind of had gotten their start off the content kind of creation. I don't have any beef with any of these people personally. Just kind of like from my view of it, this is kind of how I see the whole thing. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do think that there is this trend of you have influencers kind of just making songs because they think it would be funny, and then people are rage baiting or hate baiting or whatever you want to call it, which is the thing that like sends a bad TikTok song to number one on the Billboard charts. Which is like,
Yeah.
rage baiting is still like, you're still given the view and the listen and the royalty rate, the royalty stream. So
Yeah, it sort of shifts the incentive. So unless, I guess, differently than the old songs that these artists were really trying to speak to the soul, there's like Bohemian Rhapsody is kind of like the classic example. It's like 7 or 8 minutes or something, and it's like so much depth and storytelling. And when you compare that to a lot of songs right now, the artists themselves, it seems like they're just trying to be really edgy, and they're always like trying to be controversial, and they're in the news for this or that or this drama. And the industry also plays a part in that as well. I think it really stokes those flames, tries to get more controversy brewing between, we have the freaking, like the Drake and Kendrick rap battle or whatever, their beef. That has to be all completely made up just to like, just get people engaged at this like, really low energy level, this low frequency level of just, falling into this drama rather than really looking for like deep art. Is that sort of how you would think of it as well?
yeah, I would. I mean, it just makes it, my friend Arayas just said it spot on, and I've always kind of used this quote that she said to me one time when we were just talking about it in my living room. She was like, when everyone has access, no one has access. And I think that is so astute and articulate, because yes, it is easier than ever to put your music up, and it is easier for some kid in like nowhere, Ohio, who is so talented to like get their music heard. But then you have 120,000 songs going on Spotify and Apple Music every single day, and it's like, my dad says this all the time. There is a band in like Nowhereville, Ohio, who just made the new Rumors, but they're never going to get heard because of just the complete like downpour of music, not even music, like some of it is like white noise that's going up on Spotify, and it's like joke songs, and it's people who are just hobbyists. And I think all of that stuff, there is a place and there is an audience for all of that stuff, but it makes the people who are professionally aspiring feel a lot more hopeless about the state of the music industry. And it just makes it, and just as a consumer of music, someone who loves music, not even someone who makes it, I do find it so hard to find new good music that I like, for sure.
And like you said earlier, also just how it's becoming a slice of a slice of a slice of the pie that the actual, creator is getting. That is such a common theme in all the different topics I talk about. I talk a lot about the healthcare industry on the show. I talk about just fiat in general. This word us Bitcoiners like to use, fiat world. We kind of just throw it at everything. Mm-hmm. And I talked to Jimmy Song, and one of the things that he always talks about is just there's just more and more rent seekers kind of getting stuffed in, more management bloat, just managers and managers and managers, and not the actual producer of the thing is getting the fruits of their labor. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a good time to transition sort of into the Nostr side and the value-for-value side, because from my view, and I have far less experience than you, obviously, but for me, it seems like the technology we're seeing right now, this freedom tech, that the Nostr, which is this decentralized social media platform, Wavelake, like you talked about, we'll dive deeper into each of these pieces and how they play a part here, but it seems like all of these are really doing a lot of those management jobs for you, so you can really focus more on just creating art and not paying all these other people to not really do much. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that is so exciting, and that's terrifying to the music industry once they catch wind of all of this, is that the Wavelakes and the Fountains and the True Fans and whatever decentralized platform you use to consume your music, it removes all the middlemen. It removes the PROs, which are the performance rights organizations. It removes, like record labels. It removes managers who want 50% of the air you breathe, like that kind of stuff, for sure. Like, it really prioritizes giving value to the creators, because the creators are giving you value in the first place. And again, we shouldn't, in the traditional world, we've been basically giving our music away for free. And I think, enough of us love music enough that we're willing to do that for an amount of time. But again, that's not sustainable. Like, I'd love to have a great life where I can buy myself a house off of the music that I make one day. And that is more, I think, possible. And I feel more hopeful about that idea over in this new world, for sure.
And I think that anyone listening who appreciates art and culture, which should be everyone, they would agree that these jobs like writers and musicians and meme creators, that's where I'd probably fit in.
Those are just as important.
Absolutely important. These people should also be rewarded for the work they're putting in, and they should be able to live a good life. And when you go back many, many decades, this was completely doable, like way back, when before the money started deteriorating under fiat currency, as we know. And it's really exciting to see a new light at the end of the tunnel, an orange light at the end of the tunnel, where, now that we're using Bitcoin, we have this new version of gold, basically, which gave all those previous artists that power to be able to save and to be able to plan for the future and to be able to provide for themselves and their families. So I think that it would be cool to walk through. You gave a little bit of an introduction already to how you made your first Wave Lake song and it did really well. Could you go into a little bit more elaboration on that? How exactly this process went down of you, you'd heard about this, you heard this was a thing, you thought, okay, this is interesting. And I'm sure from your schooling, you knew that the traditional industry was not what you're looking for. So what were the steps that you took to actually get on this journey that other musicians that are listening can sort of follow along in your footsteps to do the same thing?
Yeah, so one of the first things that comes to mind with this question is the song itself that I chose to put on Wave Lake, which again is a song called Cherry on Top. And I'll kind of explain what this method is, but before I get into this, if there are any musicians listening who are thinking about doing this, I would probably recommend doing this way. So I was very purposeful with the song that I chose to put on Wave Lake, because Cherry on Top is a song that I wrote by myself. The publishing is 100% goes to me. With a lot of other songs that I have written, there's co-writers on them, I love co-writing. I think it's a great skill to have. And when people ask me, sometimes people can be really set on oh, well, you're not a real songwriter if you write songs with other people, or you're not a good enough songwriter if you just write by yourself. There's always going to be people on either side saying whatever, but I think there's a beautiful balance in coming from doing both, writing a bunch of songs by yourself and writing a bunch of songs with other people. But Cherry on Top is a song that I wrote by myself, and we put it on Wave Lake because, again, like you said in the beginning, we are still very, very early into this whole process. And a year and a half ago, when we were starting this process, we were even farther behind than we are now, because one of the things that I think has been really cool about working with Fountain and Wave Lake and all these guys is I've been coming to them with a very traditional mindset, saying hey, I think it's really great that you guys you want to give everything back to the artist. We want to go off the master recording and it's just that. We're not even thinking about the underlying song. We're just thinking about the overarching recording, because that's, if you think about just any song you hear on the radio, that's one of the big things they teach you in music school, is there's two parts to every song: the underlying composition and then the master recording. With Fountain and Wave, they were just put up the master recording and we're only going to go off of the royalties that are in the split that you did with your co-creators on that. And because I had written Cherry on Top by myself, and there is no master royalty on Cherry on Top that I did with the person who produced this song, it was really easy to say, hey, okay, I'm the sole owner of this song, so no one can get mad at me if I put this song up and they don't like Bitcoin, or they want their Bitcoin, or they're just mad at whatever. So we put that up. But in doing that, people were like, Ainsley, we want to hear more of your music. And I was like, I'd love to give you more of my music, but my music has co-writers on it. And one of the things with Wavelake was like, hey, I'm not sure if we should go with this idea of the value that the people listening should just go off of the master recording, because you're also appreciating the underlying composition. Like the songwriters, they're just as much cut out in the traditional music industry as the independent artists are. And I don't think that should be the same over here by cutting them out, by saying, oh, we're just going to go off of the master recording. Your co-writers need to get compensated too. Your co-creators need to get compensated too, because they helped you create the song. So that was a big reason why I chose Cherry on Top verse, because I was the sole owner, because it was kind of a good guinea pig of a song. And then we were like, okay, if we're going to put more songs up, guys, here's what needs to happen. And Wavelake and Fountain and everyone has been really good about working with us to be like, oh yeah, you're raising some good points. Let's figure out how we can do the splits, which is such a cool thing that everyone has really been lovely to work around, work with me on. And so now as I'm putting more songs up, like I'm gently kind of bringing in all my co-writers who have no idea about what Bitcoin is. And I'm saying, hey guys, all you have to do is just like get a wallet, get a Wavelake account, get a Fountain account, get a whatever. And then just like, let me handle the rest. Your Bitcoin is going to go straight to you. And again, it's wonderful because a micropayment to me and 4 other people is already going to give me more money than a 0.009% streaming royalty rate would.
And I would hope that at this point in Bitcoin's history, I mean, everyone's heard of it. Obviously, most people are still skeptical about it, but I have to think people in this industry, the art industry, would be more open-minded to things that are a little bit outside the box. So they're not going to be as hard-edged as like your Wall Street suit that's just like really invested in the old system. You know, the people that you'll be working with in the music industry are sort of in that mindset already of like, we need to change things a little bit. Things aren't working the way they are. They understand this. So there's hopefully some more open minds than usual. Would you say that you typically see more open-mindedness than, say, talking to your non-artist friends about Bitcoin?
I think it's a mix of both. There have been some industry people who, like my mom and I, have just gone and had coffee with, and we kind of gently tell them about this in kind of a vague way, because we know that the music industry is going to be upset about this when they find out, because again, all the middlemen are going to cut out, all the ways that the labels and the publishers and the whoever, like their bread and butter is going to be gone. But so there are some people who you tell them this and they're very like, no, the traditional way, becoming a TikTok star, is the only way that this is going to happen. And then there are some people who like, they'll sit and they'll just think for a minute, and then they'll kind of catch on a little bit, and then they'll send me an email at 3 a.m. being like, how can I get in on this? Like, there's
they went down the YouTube rabbit hole.
Exactly. There's really no in between. It's either like you're really firmly set in the ways of this is how the music industry works, or you're like, no, the music industry does need change, and this seems like it could be a change agent for sure.
And I would say if the people you're working with aren't open-minded to these things, maybe you're not working with the right people, because you want your team to be like on your side and in pushing the boundaries and finding new ways to support yourselves. All of you, all together, you're a team,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely been a little tricky to get every co-creator I've had on all these new songs in on it. But again, like once we get one song that they worked on up in this space and they start seeing it, like just a light switch goes off. They're like, I get it. Yes, let's do more.
it's crazy to me actually that there aren't more people on board. It seems like it's been you and Joe and a handful of others. I don't know the space super well, but there hasn't been a ton. Like you guys have been the early adopters for a long time. It's a little surprising, sort of like how people are surprised there haven't been more countries like El Salvador adopting Bitcoin. Like there's really, this has been a much longer, like really early part of the bell curve than we experienced, or we expected, I should say.
Yeah, there's
And
only
so,
about 1,200 artists in the space right now, compared to the how many millions of indie artists that put their music on Spotify.
yeah. So, I mean, here's a question for you actually. What would you say are the benefits of being super extremely early? Because we are in super extremely early mode right now, for sure.
I would say that early adopters are the ones who win. And I'm not saying that to be vain or anything. Like I've struggled a little bit with like how to talk about my success in Bitcoin, because I don't want to be gauche, but the thing that is revolutionary is how the money flows. But something I've heard a lot of people tell me who have kind of been around when the internet was first starting up, like, the Bill Gateses and the Jack Dorseys and the whoever, the really early adopters are the ones who win. They're the ones who can project their message enough to where the masses are going to see it and they're going to be like, oh, I get it. I think because I've been so early, I am under no illusions that I've had very unexpected success in this place. And I'm also under no illusions that I'm very lucky, because like my friends who I brought into this space, they see my success. They're like, okay, cool. I want to get in on this. But I know that my success in this space hasn't been everyone's success, and I'm very lucky and I'm grateful for that. But I think that we could get to a place where my success in this space could be everyone's success, for sure.
And I think that anyone listening to your music knows that there's a lot of reason why you're doing very well. It's because you're extremely talented and doing super well. So let's not forget that.
I appreciate that.
And something I would add on top as well, just maybe the more, I guess, more general reason why being early right now would be so good is because you get a lot of sort of free attention for just being one of the early adopters on Nostr, for example. I see that you're getting lots and lots of followers on Nostr just because people are like, oh, this is the girl that's putting out, lots of music on all these cool Lightning apps. And, this is great. I want to support this person. Like the Bitcoiners as a community eventually in the future, it's not going to be Bitcoiners anymore. It's going to be much more everyone, as we know. But
sure,
as of now, during the early days, it is going to be these more like nerdy financial people who are, who enjoy art, they want to listen to music too, but they're going to use these new apps that are Bitcoinized. So you're going to get a lot of new audience from this very different niche that isn't your typical music audience. And you're going to get a lot of followers through that. Some of them may secretly have a lot of Bitcoin. I mean, you never know. And
you never know.
They are throwing some support around. People like to see like young folks upcoming in the industry winning. And just getting into Nostr is a great spot. And I'd actually like to talk about Nostr here. We talked a little bit about Wavelake. Just to wrap up that portion, for people who've never heard of that before, is it fair to call that sort of the Spotify equivalent in Bitcoin world, or is it a little bit different than that?
I would say Wavelake and Fountain are both poised to become the Spotify, Apple Musics in this world, for sure.
Cool. Yeah, I've definitely heard they're both front runners. I know Fountain is a little bit more podcast centric, and Wavelake's a little more music centric, but there's cross pollination. So definitely like worth looking at both of those. I guess real quick, we could talk about Fountain since we talk about Wavelake quite a bit. Where does that come into this? Because I know that they were originally just about podcasts, and they're getting more into this value for value music side as well. And I know that Joe Martin told me, there's no reason there needs to be like a hard cut between the two. There can be apps that have both. So is that sort of what you'd see? Is that somewhere where you put your music as well? That's not like the primary home, but it's good to have that audience.
I would say in this space, Fountain is becoming a primary home. I really, Wavelake and Fountain are kind of the two. I'm putting my music on all the modern podcasting apps, but yeah, it did start out as like Fountain being a little bit more podcast centered. But the more that we got to know the guys at Fountain, Oscar and Nick, who are both awesome people, I got to meet them at the Bitcoin conference. they're big music supporters, and they were like, oh, I see that there's a market for music here. And so I think when I came into it, Fountain was probably at like 75 podcasts, 25 music. And I think it's evening out a little bit more now, because it's kind of like what happened with Spotify, but reverse. Spotify started out as music, and then they realized there was an audience for podcasting. And then you have all of these big Spotify exclusives like Call Her Daddy and the Meghan Markle podcast and stuff like that. And so I just think the opposite thing is happening, or the same thing, just different side of the coin is happening with Fountain.
It all just sort of ends up like an audio platform where people are just listening. So
and I also like Fountain because they have the live streaming component too. They were part of the kind of Toonster live streaming, I guess, mode, or just one of the ways that we broadcasted the last couple of V4V enabled shows that I did in Minneapolis, and then here again in Nashville in July.
Very cool. It's just good to know. So yeah, for people listening, those are the two best ones to check out. I'm a huge Fountain fan. I love going on there and just seeing like how many new supporters do I have on my podcast, because that's like part of my dream as well, is to be able to make a full living off of the Value-for-Value, just zapping for the podcast.
And the Nostr integration on Fountain that they just recently implemented is just chef's kiss.
Extremely cool. Extremely cool. Yeah. So where does Nostr come into this? This is something that I think, to me, this is sort of the top of the umbrella of all of this, where it's this decentralized social media protocol where all of these things are now becoming basically clients of this. And we've talked about the basics of Nostr in the past. For any listeners that haven't, my episode with Derek Ross is a good sort of Nostr 101.
Awesome.
Everyone loves Derek. He's a man. And so Wavelake and Fountain and all these other sort of more platforms, more centralized platforms that have good services, they're plugging into it as clients of Nostr now. So I think that's super exciting. And this is sort of paving the way for this very long-term vision of Nostr, where I don't know about you, but I visualize Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, all these things eventually getting swallowed up by Nostr, needing to become clients of it, because this is going to be such a big shift in how people, just what people come to expect from social media, where you cannot be banned. You have native Bitcoin integration, tipping back and forth, and just your whole social graph follows you everywhere. There's so many cool parts to it. So give me your view on Nostr as an artist, how it has played a part in your growth, and just anything you want to go on that. I just think it's very interesting.
Yeah, well, I think traditional social media is just as broken as the music industry is. I don't remember exactly what it's called. It might be called Social Media is Broken, but there's a great kind of like mini documentary on YouTube by Max DeMarco who talks about Nostr and kind of the whole like Jack Dorsey Twitter story, and like how he plays a role in all this, and how Nostr, I think, is poised to be the main way that we consume social media. But Nostr is so refreshing because I think I'm really the first generation that really grew up with the internet. Like, I had an Instagram account when I was like 8 that I should not have had. Not because anything nefarious was happening, but because I'm like posting pictures of me with like wet hair straight out of the shower and a sparkly zebra fedora. Like, Ainsley, the world does not need to see this. Me in like my YMCA swimming t-shirt, which is like actually a post that I did one time when I was like 9. But because I grew up on...
If it's still out there, I'm going to find it and put it on the screen for people. You better not delete it. I'm going to find it.
I'm sure it's somewhere. But I think Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok and Facebook, they all have this thing that I call perpetual yuckiness, where I get on Instagram and then I feel like I have to take a shower. It just makes me feel gross whenever I go onto it, because I remember when Instagram was still chronological, when I remember all I would see was my friends posting their middle school vacations they were taking on midwinter break, and it's not that anymore. TikTok's not that anymore. I mean, I guess TikTok never really was in the first place, but it's not organic and it's not authentic, which are two words that the music industry has made me despise, because, newsflash, nothing is organic or authentic. Everything in the traditional social media world is bought, just like it is in the traditional music industry. Like, you can buy streams, you can buy getting on a big major Spotify editorial playlist, just like you can buy Instagram followers. You can buy just views of people if you want a video of yours to hit 1 million views. And so getting on Nostr, it feels like how it did when I was 8 on Instagram, just having a good time. It feels like, there's no algorithm, which is cool. And I find it so much easier, again, for me to find people, and I think for people to find me. One of the things that is just like absolutely crazy, I've only been on Nostr for about a year, and it's already past my TikTok following, which is my biggest following that I have in the traditional world. I have like 11.7-ish followers, 11.7 thousand-ish followers on TikTok, and Nostr is just about to, or just past that, which is like exponentially, again, more value, which again, like, I don't want this to seem like I'm like, ooh, I'm followers, I'm famous, oh, I'm like, so this, like, that's not what it is. It's really not about the number. It's the fact that connection is so much easier, because again, the thing that my friend Araya said is so apt. When everyone has access, no one has access. When 8 billion people on the planet have TikTok, nobody's going to want to follow you or see what you're about, because there's always some person doing some dumb video for clickbait that's going to be more interesting and hold your like 0.5 second attention span or whatever it is. But yeah, going on Nostr just feels way more easy, and it feels more light, and it feels just easier to communicate with other people on.
I will even take the side of just saying it is awesome to have followers on Nostr, because those followers are actually connected with you forever. No matter how many new apps are made in this ecosystem, it's like we've talked about in the past, there's going to be Instagram clones, there's going to be TikTok clones, music platforms. Your followers will be with you everywhere. So the people that want to be connected with you don't have to continue. You don't have to keep saying, "Oh, follow me on this new platform." Every single time there's a new one. It's just such a waste of time, and you're never gonna. There's no cohesiveness in the legacy system of a bunch of different walled gardens everywhere and just centralized platforms. It doesn't work very well. So you really have a community there.
Yeah. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, you're good.
No, I was just going to say, and I think because in this Nostr world, we just saw it with the fountain integration of Nostr. Those fans that find you on Primal or Nos or Damus or whatever you use, they are going to stick with you because if they see someone that they like on the feed and they're like, oh, this person's a musician, then you can go over to Fountain and be like, oh, I can zap them. It's so much easier, because on TikTok, if you have a song go viral, those people who like it or who follow you because of that one video that you put up, that does not translate to Spotify fans or listeners. It just doesn't. And I think because of the time that we live in, the word revolutionary can be very overused, but I do think that's kind of what Nostr is in the integration system. And yeah, and that's also not to say that I'm not grateful for the people who have followed me on Nostr. I am. Like, it's so cool to see like my music and my content like really being appreciated for the first time in my artist life. So it's very cool.
Absolutely. And those people who choose to follow you now are, and I guess I should also say, not to think of these people as a number, of course. We love these people. We love our followers. They're the best. They're our family. They're our community. But it is, when you see the zaps coming in, you realize, oh crap, this is actually an income stream. The people that want to love and support you can. There's no friction there. They just press the little zap button, and you're all of a sudden making money on your work and your art.
And it's real.
And it's real money. It's this Bitcoin. It's not this fake money that is always deteriorating, that you have to work harder and harder just to keep up with your fiat dollars. You're getting real Bitcoin. Every single Satoshi you get, no matter how small it seems, is a fixed percentage of the overall Bitcoin supply forever. So as this supply and demand curve does its thing, that's going to become more and more valuable over time. And it's a very cool feeling mentally when you're earning this, even if it's little amounts, like it still is right now. And it's something I talked about with Joe as well. Of course, it's going to be a lot of, like 21 sat zaps and 100 sat zaps, which aren't a ton of money in dollar terms right now. But these are very early days. And one of the mechanics at play when we look at financial history and the history of money on a long time horizon is that all Bitcoiners know right now that there's a rocket that's fueling up and it's about to take off. As the more research we do, the more we know that the supply and demand is going to go in the up and to the right direction at some point, just a matter of when. And so that makes people really cling on to their money more than ever when you know that there's a lot of upside.
Yeah,
so
and one of the other things that I think is just wonderful about Nostr is that if Nostr goes away tomorrow, I'm still going to retain the value of those micropayments that someone sent me. If Instagram or TikTok goes away tomorrow, I'm not going to retain any of those followers, any of those likes that are just ones and zeros on a computer somewhere in Silicon Valley. There's no value in the traditional social media world. But again, if Armageddon happens and Nostr goes away tomorrow, those sats are still going to be in my wallet. And I'm still going to be able to put that towards making my next record, buying a house, XYZ. Like, it's very, really very cool.
It makes it real world value that you can actually use in real life.
Yeah.
And we're so conditioned to get these little dopamine spikes from like Reddit upvotes and hearts on Instagram and these likes on Facebook, all these stupid fuzzy things that these companies have made up to make us feel good and keep us coming back. But now that we have real money that we can make on Nostr, all that stuff is a joke now, Like to me, just spending time on Twitter just feels like a waste of time now. I basically just use it like everyone else on Nostr does. I just use it to try to funnel more people over to Nostr. Oh, and they're starting to even like badly shadow ban the word Nostr. I see people are starting to like put a little star on the O. Mm-hmm. And I can notice this. The more I talk about Nostr, the more it gets shadow banned. So there's an algorithm for you. They're trying to block you from knowing about this. And I've heard through the grapevine that Jack Dorsey has heard through the grapevine that Elon is well aware that Nostr is going to take over everything. So I don't think they're going to be playing nice with us. So get on Nostr now, start building. Mm-hmm. And one more little thing I wanted to throw in there just on that point, something as simple as linking someone out to your song through your Twitter. So if you were to go on Twitter, Ainsley, and post a link to your song on Wavelake, that is automatically going to get suppressed. I don't know what the exact number is. I don't think anyone is. Probably like 90% by the algorithm on Twitter because they don't want people leaving their site. Mm-hmm. So anytime you have a link to go elsewhere, you're just getting pummeled into oblivion. Where on Nostr, it's completely open. You can post anything you want, any links you want. So as a music fan myself, I'm always posting these weird songs I find on SoundCloud because, I just enjoy sharing and putting it out there on Nostr. And sometimes people send me Bitcoin for it. It's like, why would I not love this? And there's no downside. You get to be your whole self, your complete weird self. Mm-hmm. Throw out all the links you want, all the content you want. And sometimes you get some Bitcoin for it. It's freaking awesome. It's the best.
I know. And I don't whenever I want to post something a little bit more real on Nostr, I don't feel judged in a way that I do on Instagram because I've been conditioned to think that that 12-year-old Ainsley who was in middle school who was like, oh God, what's the popular girl gonna think if I post this funny picture that's just meant there's so much anxiety wrapped up in the traditional social media world. And you don't get that with Nostr. It's really awesome.
And so it's like the algorithm anxiety and the social anxiety together.
Also,
You're
I
being
wanted
punished
to go
on all
back
sides.
to the algorithm thing real quick because it's totally true with Instagram. I think since July, I think I've been getting really, really shadow banned on Instagram. Like each of my posts used to get maybe like 100, 150 likes ish. Since I started talking about Bitcoin and I'm playing the Bitcoin conference and follow me on Nostr, it's like nobody sees anything I do over there. And then you go over to Nostr and I have some of the best engagement I've ever had in my career over there.
Oh yeah, I am very often, one of my new sort of routine additions in the last several months is that I will just go and just search for memes, make some memes, and just throw them out on both of the platforms. Usually Twitter and Nostr. I usually kind of just copy and paste the same stuff over to Twitter. And I get a very clear A and B comparison. And I'm already getting way more on Nostr than I ever was on Twitter. So yeah. I know there are people out there thinking, like, how am I going to grow? And will my post not go viral because there's no algorithm? Well, I would say if you're getting worse, how do I put this? I'd say if you're having trouble getting your engagement going on a traditional or the legacy platforms, you should try it, because in my experience, I get more suppressed than ever by the algorithm. It's not really helping me. It helps the people who are just falling in line and just pushing the trending topics and being robots. So maybe your content just sucks. If you're getting a lot of viral posts on Twitter, it's not quite the compliment you thought it was.
It's the hard truth.
I've got a lot that's on my mind, and wasted time from my attempts to find some normality. And I've got a lot I need to say to try and fill the blanks that life has made, that were on display. They were on display. I don't know where to start. I feel like it's all uncharted, but I've never been closer to breaking through. And I'm beginning to know what the right way to go is, and it's somewhere that I'll be someone new.
I just realized we haven't really talked about one of the main terms that we started. We sort of, given this theme a lot of time, but value for value. We sort of tiptoed around that. What does this actually mean from like a super one-on-one level? I'm sure this is one of the things that you're pitching to your artist friends. So could you explain what that model actually means?
The biggest metaphor that I have for it is if you're walking down the street and you see an artist busking in Pike's Place Market, which I did when I was like 14, which was really fun. If you're walking down the street, you see an artist busking at Pike's, and you're like, I really like this song, and I want to show them value, and you put 100 in the case, or you put a 20 or a 50 or a dollar, whatever it is, that is inherent value for value. In the traditional music industry, I've been giving the music industry value for really kind of nothing back. Value for nothing. And then over here, there's a community that really and truly believes that artists should be paid and be able to live off of the art that they create. Because again, we've been giving our art away for free, and that's not, we shouldn't live in a society where that's the norm, because if we want to get really deep and philosophical real quick, art is the way that we all connect. It's the way that we feel and we communicate with one another. It's just like every part of my soul is an artist, and like I have to write songs because that's the way that I articulate my feelings to the world. And if there's some girl who feels the same things but she didn't know how to say it, and then I might write a song and she's like, that's exactly how I feel. That's why I am an artist. That's why I create, and that's why I do what I do. And over here in Nostr, in the Bitcoin world, people believe that, like, Ainsley, you've given me value. Like, you shouldn't be expected to, like, get nothing back. And it's not, some people have been like, well, that's, like, and it's been very traditional music industry people who have, like, told me this sentiment when I kind of tell them what's happening. They're like, well, it's kind of selfish of you to expect something back. No, it's not. That is basic human, like, trade. Like, going back to whatever we were trading with, gold coins, like dirt mulch pieces back however long ago. It goes back to this very basic thing. You give me something, I give you something in return.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great, the busking example is great, because it's like that, except you have the entire world at your disposal and you have a much wider audience. You can scale up your audience through places like Nostr, and as more people see and share your music, it gets more and more eyeballs, like at a rate where you never could in Meatspace, which is super exciting. And you've been a good example of that. I usually see it when you have some new song out because everyone's sharing it around saying, hey, check this out, check this out. And human nature, the good side comes through. I think that a lot of people that use Nostr have seen this as well. You see that people are really awesome in general. Like most people are really great and they love supporting things that they like. And again, this is still in the super early days where people are the most like holding their Bitcoin close and they're still supporting, like they're still showing love. So it's really exciting for what the future holds. And when more adoption comes and Bitcoin has risen and so people are less holding their Bitcoin so closely. And so there's going to be a lot of money flowing around as people have this opportunity. So I'm sure that, I mean, you have to be super excited about this, I can imagine, because you are one of these early adopters who's doing this, getting this early audience. You're one of the biggest artists on all of Nostr. So, I mean, what excitement do you have for the future? I'm sure that you're very looking forward to it.
I'm excited about a lot of things. I'm excited about, I think at its very core, I'm excited about value for value becoming the norm again, because you give me something, I give you some, or you give me something, I give you something. Again, that kind of really basic ethos. I'm excited about the shows that we're going to be doing in this space that'll be live streamed and broadcast. I'm excited about, there's nothing set in stone yet, but there have been rumblings, like people in the industry have been talking like, Ainsley, like, what if we got you and Joe and Just Loud and maybe some other people together? Like, what if we did a tour? What if we did something like that? So, and we're all just like, tell me when, and I'll be there. I mean, there's just so much possibility and there's so much hope. I'd say it all the time, but if it was October 10th, 2024, and a different reality, and this whole Bitcoin thing had never come to me, I would be feeling so much more hopeless than I do now, because I'm 20. I've been doing this since I was 13, 14. I mean, I know I'm young, but I've been at this for a while. And so when people hear that I'm jaded by the traditional music industry, they're like, oh, you just haven't given it the chance or whatever. It's like, no, I've had the experience where I've seen that this isn't working. And if we were in a different world where this whole Bitcoin thing hadn't come along, I think I'd be way closer to kind of being like, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I need to just go find something else. But because we have this whole new aspect, I feel so much more hopeful that like I could go on tour one day and maybe people would show up. Maybe people would want to buy my merch. Maybe people want to give me value for the art that I put my heart and my soul into, because they don't do that in the traditional world. So
I love everything about that. I couldn't agree more. And I'm getting so excited for this renaissance in art that we see coming because of all of this happening. And it's giving so many new opportunities to have new people that maybe never even did art before come get their start and have an actual path that makes sense. There's an actual orange brick road to, making this a real thing that they can do and they can actually monetize. Because think about how many people out there haven't even delved into this world because they've heard all these nightmares of how it's impossible to make a living with it. There's too much competition, this or that or whatever. This is giving people an opportunity, and I'm super excited about it. I have two last quick questions to throw at you before we start wrapping things up. The first one is, if you could wave a magic wand and get any artist out there, any musician that you're a huge fan of that you wish would just come in and just join you in becoming a value for value artist in the Nostr world, who would you do it to?
I've had a lot of time to think about this question, because I've heard people say like, oh, we want Taylor Swift to come in. We want Justin Bieber to come in. And I actually think that is the exact opposite of who we want in this space. Because again, I love those artists. They are immensely talented, but they've had their own success. This other thing is working for them. And if that's working for them, I think that's great. You should stay there. But if you get a Taylor Swift or a Justin Bieber in this space, I think their mere presence is going to overshadow all the work that we've done in this space. And it's just going to be about, oh, of course, if Taylor Swift comes over here and she's going to bring her millions of fans, of course she's going to break every record possible. But it's going to be about the accomplishment of this one person rather than an entire community, and about what we've worked so hard to accomplish. So in my head, I think we want kind of like, I don't like using this term, but it's like, this is what people say a lot more. Like, I think we need like a C or a D level artist coming in who like has just enough fans who love them enough that they will follow them anywhere that they go. Because then they're going to bring over more people, because we do need more people in this space for sure. I just don't know if like a massive bombardment of like the Beehive or the Swifties or the whatever, and as much as I love those two women, I really do. Swifties, Beehive, when you find me, don't come for me. I know you're going to find this one day. But we need to bring a few people over, I think, little by little at a time. And so then we can still appreciate their music and their artistry, but then it's still about the community at large. And so to answer your question, I would love to see like a Bruno Major come over here. I'd love to see like a Jacob Collier come over here. I'm trying to think about who else. Oh, one of my favorite artists in Nashville, her name is Caitlin Smith. And I've been so lucky because I've gotten to meet her a couple times. She's just one of my songwriting idols. She's written like massive hits that you like wouldn't know that she wrote, but something like I'm Gonna Lose You by Meghan Trainor comes on and you're like, oh hey, Caitlin wrote that. I've gotten to meet her a few times and she's been so wonderful to me every time. So I think we need kind of people like that who have small but very devoted followings to kind of come over here.
That's a fantastic answer. And I think that this is very similar to, when you ask a Bitcoiner who you want to come into Bitcoin, no one says like, oh, I really just hope more BlackRock executives come into Bitcoin. You want the people that are on the smaller side who have more growth in front of them, who deserve this more than anyone else,
I think it's slow and steady wins the race. It's kind of tortoise in the hare, because again, if everyone comes over at once, the system is going to crash and it's going to be crazy and it's going to be a nightmare. So I think just incremental. Baby steps.
And we also have this saying as well that Bitcoin is for enemies. Like eventually everyone's going to come in. Even these giants that we hate are going to come in, and that's just the way it is. That's an open protocol for you. It doesn't block anyone. So, but we can also make sure that we spend our own energy trying to get these people that we really love and we want to help them up, and that we know that they really deserve this, to get those early spoils that we talked about. So that's where we can all put our own energy. All right. One more question. And this is another one I have a feeling you've spent some time thinking about. Dream venue to have a show. Because we know that here, like, we're not just playing music into the computer screen as these weird Bitcoin Nostr people. Like, we still go out and so we love the real world. And like I said, I saw you play at the Vinyl Lounge, and it was super cool watching the sats streaming on the screens. Like, it was live streaming and you could actually see people shooting money out. That was super freaking cool. But yeah, where is your dream venue to go play a giant show and have that on the big stage?
As a PNW boy, you're going to know. You're going to get this.
The Gorge. The Gorge.
Yes!
I got it. I knew it. Let's go.
And I'm so upset because I lived in Seattle for 5 years and I never saw a show at the Gorge. And so I'm going to manifest that the first time I go to the Gorge is going to be when I play the Gorge. So. It's
amazing. That's a really good goal. Don't even go there until you're performing there, because then it will be 10 times as magical. I can say it. So I went there several times, and it is just the coolest, most wonderful place. I recommend anyone who's in the Pacific Northwest to go up there sometime for a festival or a show of some kind. It's incredible. So that freaking awesome answer. I wasn't expecting that.
Gorge. Like every video and photo I've seen from it, I'm just like, one day. Also, I think just bonus answer would be Red Rocks, because it's Red Rocks. But also my dad's from Colorado, so my dad and I have always had a pact that if I get to play the Gorge, my dad is sitting in, because that's been his lifelong dream, to play Red Rocks.
Another great one. I also went there. I visited a college buddy of mine over there in Denver, and we went to see Above and Beyond there, and it was just incredible, magical. The sound is awesome. I'm still putting a Gorge above it, though. It's like Gorge lights.
Gorge, and then that. And I mean, of course, like, I've always been, like, shoot big. Like, if we could do, like, V4V stadium tours, like, I'm the kind of person, like, you put me in front of less people and I'm going to be more nervous, but if you put me in front of more people, I'm like, all right, kids, let's go.
Absolutely. Ainsley Costello, give me your message to the artists out there who are listening, and their brains are tingling with ideas and inspiration and thoughts right now of all these cool things that we've talked about. And they're ready to get going. Give them a pep talk on why they should just go all in on this, go try it out, see what happens, and why they will be happy they did.
Mm-hmm. I think my answer to that is very simple. Why wouldn't you? The traditional music industry is not working for anyone. It's not working for anyone. And I think we've been deluded into thinking that, oh, it'll work one day. I just need to write the right song. I just need to do the right thing. It's like, it's not always about. One of the things that was tricky for me, kind of like in this shift over kind of like still living in both worlds. Like I always kind of thought that the traditional industry wasn't working for me because it was my fault, because I wasn't writing the good enough song, because I wasn't putting on a good enough show or whatever. And I was putting it all back on me. But it's not you, artist, whoever might be listening. It's not you. I'm sure that you are an amazing, immensely talented musician who deserves to have the world at your feet, who deserves to have the audience, big or small, that you've always dreamed of. This isn't working. It's not your fault. It's by the music industry's own design. So come over here, try it out. And when, I'm trying to convince my co-creators to come in here and they're kind of like, oh, I don't know if I should do this. I'm like, why wouldn't you? That's really the best way I can put it. Why wouldn't you?
It's worth giving it a shot. If us weirdos turn out being right, then you'll be very glad you did. I think that there's a lot of smart people out there that I know are going all in on this right now. And I am deciding to do it myself. I know you are. And I think that we're going to be very happy we did in 10 years. So very much looking forward to continue this journey, following along. Speaking of following along, where can people follow you, Ainsley?
Absolutely. Well, I think this is actually the first interview where someone's asked me, where can I follow you? My first instinct has been like, oh, let me tell them what the Nostr stuff is. I believe, wait, hold on, let me double check. I think I'm just Ainsley Costello on Nostr. This is the other thing that's great about Nostr. Just like your posts are gonna be the same, your profile is the same. When people ask me, Ainsley, what's your Instagram? What's your TikTok? They're all different names because apparently I couldn't find my own name on anything. I am Ainsley at tunster.io. That's how you'll find me on Nostr. And then if you want to listen to my music, I'm just Ainsley Costello on Wavelake, Fountain, and on any modern podcasting app like True Fans, Podverse, Podcasting Guru, and all the other ones that I can't think of right now. The names are escaping me. But all wonderful platforms that you should give a try to.
I will put all of those in the show notes so people can go find you and listen. I know they're going to love your music and be excited to follow along as well. Ainsley, thank you so much for joining me today. This was extremely fun. I really enjoyed talking to you and learning about all this because I'm still getting sort of into this world myself. I didn't even have Wavelake until Joe talked me into it yesterday. So I'm going to go listen to all your music and enjoy it, and looking forward to it. Just following along. It's going to be a great time.
Thank you, Ben. It was so lovely to meet you. And thank you so much for working with me on my schedule to finally sit down and do this. I'm so excited that we could. And absolutely, go check out Wavelake and Fountain. There are so many incredible artists over there. I'm trying to think of just like who are some good people off the top of my head.
Like that's another good question. Who else should people look at as well?
Yeah, I mean, of course, Joe, who you interviewed, my friend Just Loud, my friend Kavinya, who is awesome, Sarah Jade, and then I have a couple of friends who I'm biased. I brought them up earlier, but these are all my real life friends who I brought into this space. Emily Deranged, Reyes, Jojo Scott, they are all just femme fatale, incredible female Nashville artists who are great songwriters, and they're all very different from each other. If you want like indie pop, emo, like rage, go for Emily. If you want like Broadway pop diva, go for Reyes. And then if you want like 70s Fleetwood Mac queen, go for JoJo.
That's great. If you could send me just a list of links to all those, because there's some interesting sounding names. I don't want to spell them wrong. Send me all of them. I will put every single one of them in show notes so we can get people the perfect starter pack to go listen to some new Value for Value music. Wonderful chatting with you, Ainsley. I will talk to you soon. I look forward to keeping in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ben.
Can't fight inevitability, even though it's killing me. Can't explain why some things just end. Can't say we didn't try to reach the other side. Started as lovers, but ending it as friends. And we can't go back. Two ships knowing that the storm won't pass. Two ships sinking and they're sinking fast. Lost it all along the way, not sure why.